Hey class, this is Casey Shear with our CIT336 teaching presentation. We're going to be talking about PHP while loops. But a little disclaimer, if I keep on looking off screen, it's because I have two monitors and one has my open broadcast recording and the other one has all of my stuff that you guys see. So if I'm looking that way, that's why. But yeah, we're talking about PHP while loops. While loops are pretty neat. You would first start out by, let's go to my example here. Typing out while, and then in parentheses you have the condition, x equals 1, or condition, this statement equals this statement, or whatever you want to happen. And then you have whatever needs to be executed. Usually people would put something happens and then an increment or whatever, so therefore there's a way for it to break out of its while loop and it doesn't become an infinite while loop. Anyways though, we'll talk about that some more in a second. But yeah, while loops are great. They basically just cycle through and run through the iteration every single time until it gets to a point where the condition is no longer true. So in this example here, we can see with the PHP, I have a variable. This is actually just an example I took from W3 schools. But while x equals 1, we start off with that. And then while x is less than or equal to 5, it's going to echo out the number that we have, x, which at the first time would be 1, give a bracket, so do a new line, and make x equals 1 more. And so basically it goes through that iteration as long as the condition is fulfilled. So it should go through like 5 times. So if we go ahead and run this, we see over here on my right side, numbers 1, numbers 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So what happens is it goes through the while, and the while goes, oh, is x less than or equal to 5? Yes, so then it prints out, it echoes out, the number equals 1 and does a line break. And then adds to 1. So now, at this point in time, at the end of that, number equals 2. It goes through and checks. It's still less than or equal to 5. So echoes out again that number equals 2. Does line break and makes it 3. At the end of that one, it equals 3. And it does this again for 4. Runs through the iteration. And then it equals 3. It equals 4 at the end of that. Runs through. Oh, it's still less than or equal to 5. So it runs through until it gets all the way to 5. Because at the end of 4, it equals 5. So when it starts the 5th one, before it prints out this line, it equals 5. So if we were to take away the equal sign and just do is it less than 5, it would not print out the last one, because at the end of that, it goes through and goes, oh, it equals 5. So it won't do that. For example, let me press that. See, no 5. Anyways though, you can make this for any number if you want. If you want to do 50, for example, in this example, we can do that. And it'll print out 50. If you want to do 500, so as long as that number is less than 500, it'll run through 500 times. I tried taking away and making an infinite loop. Basically, I just commented this out and ran it. And my browser froze and couldn't close it. I got it closed and it reopened, and it opened the same browser and crashed again and froze, and I finally got it to go away. But I kept the error up just to show you guys. It's like, we're sorry, Firefox crashed on you and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so in this example, that's not a good thing to do. But there are times where an infinite loop, or at least a loop that'll continue running until a condition changes from an outside source. So you could have it on a server that it'll keep on doing a certain function until something happens. And those times, some servers in some places want that. You want it to continually run and run and run unless it encounters an error, in which case it then shuts down and stops, or displays an error message saying, hey, we encountered a problem, we got to shut down and stop. So there are times where infinite or near infinite loops are very, very helpful. So yeah, that's kind of the while loop. You type while, you have a condition, and then you would do your statement. Yeah, I have a second example. Let me close that down. Yeah, I have a second example here I got from Code Academy, which I thought was pretty neat. I pulled some style sheets, but we aren't using those, so we'll just go ahead and delete that. It's a coin flipper. Oops. It's a coin flipper, so it's going to tell us that we're going to flip a coin until we get 3 heads. It has head count to count whenever we have a head, has a flip count to count total coin flips, whether they're heads or tails, and has our while loop here. with an if and else in it. So while the head count is less than 3, it'll continue doing iterations. It does a flip, which gives a random number of 0 to 1, or ran there, and 0 or 1. And then each time it runs through iteration, it adds 1 to the flip count. If the flip is true, basically, if it's going to be our heads, it will then add 1 to the head count, and it'll echo basically just a little fancy div class for their thing. But basically, it'll put a letter H representing H coin that we flipped on the screen for us. If it doesn't flip, isn't true, it's going to give us the else then, which will make head count equals 0. So it doesn't add to it. So it kind of starts that heads over. So we have to get 3 in a row. And then it echoes the tails. And then after it runs through enough iterations to get 3 in a row, it then echoes out it took blank flips, because it adds the total flip counts. So let's go ahead and see that, and we'll kind of run through it again. So here we see it took 15 flips right there at the end. Heads, heads, heads. So basically ran through this, got tails, got tails. So it did else, else, then it got a flip. 2, bunch of tails, heads, tails, heads, heads, heads. So it ran through all of those iterations till it got 3 in a row. But that wraps up my while loop, and I thank you guys for listening. I hope you learned a lot.